Hello, everyone. How's it going? I hope you are enjoying the All-in Hackathon till now. I think I saw so much many of you during the prototype workshop, and we actually now have Paul Young joining from GitHub, okay? And he's going to talk about building for environmental sustainability. Let's wait for a couple of minutes, let everyone join, and then I'll hand it over to Paul. And I'm sure he has a ton of things to share with everyone. And if I remember it correctly, which I'm sure I do, there is a building for sustainability hack prizes that will be there in this all-in open source hack, right? So I'm sure Paul is going to help you out with so many ideas. Also talk about his experiences, and maybe you could get some idea from there. So let me just reduce the background music a bit. I think that should be fine enough. And if you have not registered for the event yet, I will share the link to the event registration in the chat. So please do register for the event. Helps us track, of course, and it also helps you in a way to know that so many things that you have participated in, right? Okay, so I think we have a couple of you join in here. Let your friends know, let your teammates know that there is this amazing session it's happening right now, and ask them to join. Now, before I hand it over to Paul, I would like to introduce him. So actually, here, so Paul joined GitHub just 4 weeks ago, and right now he is working as the head of sustainability. He previously worked at Meta for 9 years, and in that time, he helped launch the Meta's first climate track team, which is such an amazing thing. It was with regards to leading the regenerative agriculture workstream, which included exploring and helping agroforestry through WhatsApp bots in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. He also led the global nonprofit partnership team and also led the product partnerships team at Instagram and helped launch Instagram stories, which I think is one of the most amazing things, feed ranking, live, and more. Now, before Paul worked at Meta, he initially led digital at nonprofit charity water, funding clean water projects across Africa and South Asia. He's visited Ethiopia, Rwanda, and CAR through that work. Paul is Australian and now lives in Los Angeles with his wife and 2 children. I think an amazing person in general. I would now actually invite him to stage. Let me remove my share screen and welcome Paul.
Hi there. How's it going, everyone? It's very nice to be here. It's early Saturday morning in Los Angeles, which means at some point we might get a cameo from my 4-year-old daughter. So if she appears, she'll be chatty.
I think we'll look forward to that. Maybe even she can give us some ideas about
Yeah, it's
what
quite
can
possible.
we do. Yeah,
She
exactly.
has
What can
ideas.
we do to build environmental sustainability projects? Okay, I will actually now go backstage. Okay, let you take it away from here. I am sure everyone is so much looking forward to this session. So I'll shut up. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, you do. Great. And firstly, yeah, thank you for joining and being part of the hackathon. I have a thick Australian accent, and I tend to speak fast when I get excited, and all things climate and the potential for open source is very exciting to me. So I'll probably talk too fast, but I will try not to. And I'm happy to take questions. I don't have a huge amount of content to go through. I'll share a few slides. I tried to point to some resources that I thought you might find useful, but I'm very happy to take questions or chat. I saw a message pop up on the screen before, so I think I will see everything fine, or UT will help me. So I'll just share my screen and go through a few things. Great. Perfect. There we are. Yes, I'll talk about sustainability at GitHub. I'll also talk about how all of us can have an impact on climate change through using tech, through using open source. As UT mentioned, I only started 4 weeks ago, so I'm pretty new at the company, but I'm just so excited about the potential, and I can share some of the great work that's been happening so far. But first up, let me just ground us in some of the science. And this is important to see. I'm going to assume that if you're on this call, that you know climate change exists, and in fact, you might even be seeing climate change affecting your community and where you live. I know for me, I've lived through the Australian bushfires a few years ago, where my country was crowded in smoke from the hottest and largest bushfires we'd ever seen, that came on the back of one of the largest droughts we'd seen in our history. Actually, for me, hey, Jack. It's my son. He might come say hello. For me, Africa was part of my start in climate. Hey, mate. This is Jack. This is my little boy. I thought it'd be my daughter. We might get her too. Hey, buddy. I was in Ethiopia when I worked at Charity Water. I was in northern Ethiopia in Tigray, seeing some of the water projects that we helped fund about 13 years ago. This is around 2010. And I remember talking to the team we partnered with there, who worked in remote villages, drilling wells and providing clean water. And I was asking the team, what did they feel like they needed from us? What was hard in their communities? And what they told me then was the weather patterns they were noticing were changing. Their rainy season had become less consistent, and the farm practices that people had done, that their parents had done, that their grandparents had done, they were changing because the rains were changing. And I remember being really struck by that. I lived in New York City, and we'd seen Hurricane Sandy, we'd seen some of these large weather effects, but I hadn't really thought about how much climate change would be affecting communities directly. And it started me on a path to turning my whole career to climate and learning it. The image you'll see on the screen, it's actually from a really good GitHub repo. There's a repo of open source climate visuals from a climate scientist, Ed Hawkins. I'll throw a link in the chat in a little bit. Actually, I'll probably just do it right now. I'll do it in a minute. Where you can see all sorts of awesome infographics and visuals to explain climate science. In this one, you'll just see time and again, you'll see in red, carbon dioxide increasing, in green at the top, carbon dioxide increasing in the atmosphere. And you'll see how it massively spiked on the left side recently. And when you look down at the purple graph at the bottom with real world effects, you can see how just since the steam engine was invented in the Industrial Revolution, that's when all the carbon poured into the atmosphere. And that's when we saw these massive spikes in temperature. The black line is global temperatures increasing, and in blue, in sea levels rising and the other effects. So we know climate change is here, and it can feel daunting. And particularly, see you, Jack, my little boy leaving. 2050, we're going to start seeing some of these effects. And for us, for me, I'll be pretty old in 2050, but my son will be 30, and he'll probably be thinking about raising his family, and he's going to be living in an extremely warmer world, which is going to bring more extreme weather. It's going to bring a lot of uncertainty into his life, unless we take drastic climate action now. But I have hope. And one area I have hope is the potential for open source coding and tech, and the potential for AI to accelerate climate solutions. We have a lot of these solutions. Renewable energy technology. Replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy is the most important single thing we can do to bring down warming. And we have a lot of this technology. It's how do we get it out there faster? And where can we find more efficiency and use less energy? You all right, mate, with the door? You want to come sit in my lap? No, you don't want to? Okay. Just don't knock anything over. I'm going to keep watching him in my video. This graph here I got, I took it from within a Microsoft AI for Accelerating Sustainability playbook. That's a very good document. I'll share a link to that as well. But it's from some academic research showing a similar CO2 graph. So you can see on the y-axis, it's their predictions of gigatons of CO2 emitted per year, and the years at the bottom. And you'll see where we are right now, around 2024. We're on that trend that's going up into dangerous territory, too warm, which is going to have terrible effects for our kids' generations and for our lives. Now, if we stay in the red, the planetary destabilization, and we don't change things, that's where we'll lose coral reefs. We're going to see incredible droughts. We're going to see incredible hardships based on a warmer world. Now, what we need to do is drop temperatures, and there's many paths to that. And what this paper was highlighting was there's a path driven by AI, accelerated through AI, where things can be deliberate for the good. That's where we want to land, that AI is additive to society. It helps us boost our jobs, boost our productivities, find efficiencies. And it's not in the blue, green but inhumane. Green but inhumane would be, we moved really fast to end all coal plants and all gas plants, but there's many countries that need that energy right now. There's many people and industries that need that energy. And we shouldn't have people lose when they could be gaining from fossil fuel. We should just find the best path to replace them. So anyway, bit of background. I'll share both the links to the Accelerating Sustainability with AI playbook from Microsoft that this graph is within. You can look for the research if you're interested in it, and to Ed's GitHub library of climate science visuals, because it's very good. So given that, here's what we are trying to do at GitHub, and that's to accelerate climate progress through developer collaboration. At GitHub, we're all about developers. You are who we build for, you are who we build tools for, and helping developers collaborate with each other is our mission. And so what we're looking at is how can we help accelerate climate progress? How can we help the world, help accelerate these climate solutions through developers? What can we do? Now, at the core of that, the first piece is what we do with our own footprint. So what is GitHub directly responsible for before even how we use the platform? So GitHub as a business, we use energy. We use water for our operations. That's both for, we have a couple of offices that we need to power. We have remote workers around the world. There's about 3,000 people who work at GitHub. And so at their homes, they're working for GitHub. I'm using a light in my house right now. I have solar panels on my roof though, and it's sunny today. So some green energy. And data centers. Data centers are a big part of our footprint. So what our commitments are around using 100% renewable electricity by 2025. So for all of our operations, we are committed to using 100% renewable electricity, solar, wind, geothermal, that doesn't produce carbon. We have a commitment that we line up with Microsoft on to be carbon negative by 2030. And so what we need to do is reduce the carbon intensity of our operations as much as possible. So everywhere we can, how do we ensure that there's less carbon pollution going into the atmosphere? How do we not contribute to that graph that I showed earlier? And how can we invest in carbon removal? How can we invest in technology, well, both technology and frankly, trees that can help remove carbon from the atmosphere? And then finally, how can we be water positive as a business by 2030? So how do we replenish all the water we use in our operations? Water is required in data centers, water is used in our offices, even the electricity that's generated to power things uses a fair bit of water in that process. So we measure the water across operations to replenish it. So for us, that's what matters. How do we ensure that GitHub itself as a company has a minimal footprint? But let me move on to the open source space. I think this is what's the most interesting for everyone here. If you're watching this call and you think, well, what can I do? How can I take climate action? What matters? Do I plant a tree in my yard? Do I, think about what I eat? What do I do? I wanted to share some great things I've seen in the open source universe. The first thing I'll share is the open source sustainable tech community. They have a website, they have a GitHub repo, and this is probably the best open source mapping of all of the climate and sustainability focused open source projects in the world. They've got about 2,000 listed currently. I'm talking with the team now to see how we can help them expand that even further. But if you go into this repo, I'll post a link to it too, or their website, Open Source Sustainable Tech, you'll just see dozens and dozens and dozens. There's 2,000 different projects, and it's everything from open source projects to map electricity production in real time around the world and what's got renewable sources and doesn't, through to mapping of trees online, through to AI models focused on climate. There's a lot of exciting stuff in there. I had a look at it, and I just searched for the word Africa. So this is not at all I'm sure there's plenty that are Africa focused, but I thought for this group it might be interesting. And here are some of the examples of what I found within the database. These are open source projects on GitHub. Resilient Atlas, interactive analytical tool for understanding the key stresses and shocks affecting rural livelihoods, production systems, and ecosystems in the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, and South and Southeast Asia. So again, that gets right to my point. This is like looking at that data around, farmers in rural areas of Africa, what is the stresses that are affecting them, driven by climate change. AirQO, hardware and software tools to deliver clean air for all African cities. Another beautiful thing about renewable energy is that, if you have solar panels, if you have wind energy, there's no dirty stuff going into the air that you have to breathe that makes you sick and can limit your life expectancy. But if you're living near a coal plant, or if you've got a lot of petrol guzzling vehicles on the road, whether that's motorbikes or cars, like that's bad for the air quality. So how do we measure the air quality? Also, there can be large forest fires these days that hurt the air quality. ISDA soil, a soil property map with 30 millimeter resolution for Africa. Making better soil and regenerative agriculture is another great climate area that's really important and will help a lot of people. If you have better soil, typically that can be better for the climate and better for the farmland. And the final one they've got is Digital Earth Africa Notebooks, Earth observations to address social, environmental, and economic changes on the African continent. So that was just me searching the word Africa. I'm sure there's a lot more stuff and something that might appeal to you. So have a look at the open source climate repo. And there's an associated site from the same group called Climate Triage. I'm pretty sure it's climatetriage.com. But if you Google Climate Triage, you'll find it, and I'll post a link too. These are good first issues across the open source climate sustainable tech database that I just shared. So it's a way that you could right now find a good first issue and find a way to contribute to one of these projects very easily where they're asking for help. So I'd encourage you, if you just want to play around and hack into something, you can have a look right here and find an issue to work on immediately that would be helpful for those open source projects. One other research source that might be interesting for the group that I wanted to share, there's a group that GitHub supports called the Green Software Foundation. And the Green Software Foundation is focused on reducing the energy use and carbon intensity and footprint of software globally. So when you write code, somewhere a data center has to serve up that code when people access it. Now, a data center could be powered by clean energy. It could be, next to a nuclear reactor, or it could be on a grid that's got a lot of solar and wind, or it could be that data center could be using coal energy, the dirtiest fossil fuel that exists. And if so, the code that's running on that system may either be clean and have zero carbon intensity if it's solar, wind, nuclear powered, or it could be very dirty if it's on a coal grid. And what the Green Software Foundation is trying to do is find ways as you develop software to limit the footprint, to limit the amount of carbon that's used, to drop the energy use, which also will drop water use. And the link I have at the top, learn.greensoftware.foundation, that is a training course, a free training course that the Green Software Foundation has to explain how all this works in depth and how you can build green software. So you get a certificate at the end if you do it. So it could be a cool thing if you're looking to learn some things and get more qualifications in your CV. It's out there. It's free. It's in a number of languages, no African languages. It's in English. But you can have a look on the website. I think maybe it's in Italian, but you'll see. So learn.greensoftware.foundation. And then just to finish up, and then I'll stop for some questions. Why does it matter? Is this just nice for the world, or does it really matter for me? Well, this can be great for your career. I'll point to the Future of Jobs report from 2023. This was from the World Economic Forum, and they did a big report on how they expect jobs to change over the coming decades, over the coming course of our careers, particularly if you're early career, you're probably younger than me, how jobs are going to change in your career. And no surprise, AI and machine learning is expected to be a huge source of new jobs, particularly in the technical space. But so is sustainability specialists. So is what we're calling the green transition. We need to transform society in all these ways to have new green jobs, to power new green industries, to fix this climate problem, to give our kids a better future. It's that simple, but it does mean there's going to be a whole bunch of new jobs and new skills required for the societal change. So AI machine learning is probably going to be a great growth spot. It's a very exciting space right now. But similarly, green jobs may have some opportunity for you. Yeah, these are their listing of the top fastest growing and declining jobs. So it's they're expecting that things like bank tellers, postal clerks, cashiers, data entry, where humans are doing data tasks, are probably going to reduce, whereas using that information, analyzing it, and placing AI on top of it's going to grow. But you'll notice number 2, sustainability specialists, number 9, agricultural equipment operators. Agriculture is a field that could really transform for green. So yeah, I think it's exciting to see the job potential. With that, that's what I'd prepared today. I'm happy to take a few questions. I think I might see the chat, or UT will be able to steer me any questions. Yeah, happy to take anything at all. I'll wait around for a couple of minutes, but I appreciate your time and your involvement in this hackathon.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much. That was really interesting insights, definitely, at least for me. Uh, I had a quick question, and I'll also wait for any questions in the comments. Uh, so, if someone had to get started uh, into this as like a career, okay, so like I would ask more generically, like, how did you move into this sector of like
Mm,
sustainability and doing it for GitHub, doing it for Meta? What? How did you exactly move on this side?
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
good question. Because I didn't do a environmental degree. I'm not a climate scientist, as many in the industry are. Um, for me, it was a lot of self learning. And it was, how do I bring my skills, which are digital partnerships, products. I've always been a tech guy. Tech for good has been the core of my career. How do I bring that to climate? So that's why I'm in this world now, talking to developers about how to attract climate, and I'm not talking about myself as a climate scientist. I did a lot of self-learning. There's a lot of great websites, communities, a lot of people educating. A lot of people are interested in thinking, what can I do on climate? A few great resources. There is a book and website, Drawdown, DRAWDOWN, Drawdown. I think it's drawdown.org. Project Drawdown, really useful. They've analyzed all the types of solutions and where people can tackle it. In the tech space, there's a community, climate.tech, which has a Slack channel and a whole bunch of techie people talking about very hard tech things. That's a cool way to network and meet people in the field and connect. But I think for hackers and coders, like, get into some of these open source projects and just find a way to be useful. Like, find one of those good first issues on climate triage and do something. Yeah, so there's plenty of paths, because we need every skill and we need everybody to take climate action.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That helps. Also, while you were sharing, while you were sharing before, I actually went around and searched for the links that you were talking
Oh,
about.
thank you.
I think like there are some amazing things, definitely never seen before. Yeah, someone in the chat also says that they never knew there was a correlation between software and environment. And trust me, even I'm blown about this. So I think next time onwards, I'll try and see if my code is more carbon neutral in a way.
Yeah, and the Green Software Foundation are doing great work on that. I've done their practitioner training, and it's pretty accessible. And there's a lot more happening. They just did a hackathon as well, so they're a good community thinking about that. But I think there's definitely going to be more of and yeah, I see the post coming in, which is great. Learn.Green Software Foundation is their link, but as coders, like, that is part of our footprint. But the cool thing is, at your own home, either by finding a great first issue from Climate Triage and hacking away at it, or by maybe there's a project that you're running and you could apply some of the green software practices, you might have more of an impact on carbon for the world and the climate than anything you could do as an individual.
Hmm.
So that's cool, because it can feel like such a big problem. So it's like, well, how do I help change the weather? well, you can have a really big impact through code and through, something that you could talk about in a job interview, something that allows you to connect with other people. I think that's powerful.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. While you were talking, I was like, okay, I really had this question of what should I do which will actually lead to an impact? But you kind of answered it. Like any smallest of things that we do will have an impact. Okay, so yeah, that was like really really insightful. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate this. Any other questions from any of the hackers who are listening to the stream? Anything? Okay, I think it's been so insightful that people are going to take some time to actually go over the good first issues from climate triage.
There's plenty to
But
look at, so please have a look through that.
oh, yeah, there is a question now. Are there any mentors or experts available to provide guidance and feedback throughout the hackathon? So, well, Paul is not going to be around for that, but I will be. More of the MLHers are going to be. So, if you have any questions about that, yes, I will be there. You can just tag at the rate active MLHers and we'll be there on Discord to help you. But if you have anything that you want to ask about climate triage, for example, I think Paul is available right now for a few more minutes to help us and guide us.
And I'll be excited to see the sustainability and climate focused projects that pop out of this as well.
Yeah, definitely. We will make sure that we share that with you. And actually, if you don't mind, I saw this and discover a meaningful way to join open source by contributing to these good first issues. And wow, my category. This looks amazing actually. And yeah, as I
Yeah,
said,
I
trying
talked
to.
to I talked to the team just the other day about this, and it's the same team that's been running the open source sustainable tech list. So they have this list of thousands of projects already, but they've done the next level of work of like just handing you direct good first issues that are ready to go.
Yeah. That looks amazing. There is a quick question I think for you. Is there any career path that they can take to enter into field of sustainability engineering?
Yeah, I guess honestly, you're probably on the right one. Like if you're working in software and getting software credibilities, they're so applicable because all of these industries will want different developers over time. Like solar I think you saw that big list of jobs we had. I'll just have a look at it, and yeah, if you look, these are these growing jobs in AI, machine learning, robotics engineers, big data specialists, agricultural equipment operators, digital transformation. Like all industries will need this. So on that front, on sustainability engineering, there's honestly so many paths into the climate and sustainability industry. The sustainable industry directly, that is a path that requires a lot of carbon accountants, and there's a whole fields around that, environmental scientists, environmental science degrees. But it is such a broad space that if you're a software developer, honestly, you could be in any of these industries, whichever one kind of appealed to you the most. And probably, if you look at the open source sustainable tech list and your interest areas, if you're really interested in solar, there's a whole list of different solar projects that you could like start hacking on now, that in a job interview with a solar company you could demonstrate it. I see a couple more questions coming in too, you too.
Yeah. So, what's the least climate detrimental coding language? Can you shed some light on that? I think Python
I
maybe.
do not actually know the answer to that. It might be that it depends. I would think the Green Software Foundation would have some of the best thoughts on that. One of the things that will matter is where the energy source of the code being loaded is probably the piece, the data center piece. So having a smaller energy footprint, so code that's more efficient and uses less energy, doesn't waste any energy, is always going to be good, regardless of the language. And regardless of the language, the carbon intensity of the energy that powers a data center is going to be powerful. So no matter what language, if it lands on a data center that's got a lot of renewable energy powering it, it's going to be less damaging. But if it lands on a data center that's on a coal grid, it's going to be more damaging. Probably. That's, I think, the answer. I could be wrong. Green Software Foundation would have some of the best knowledge and experts on that.
Perfect. No worries. Thank you so much. Actually, like I'm sure that guides Shamari on the right path. There's another question here. What are some effective strategies or tools you believe could be utilized to gather accurate and timely data during the damage assessment phase of disaster recovery efforts, particularly in the context of climate-related emergencies in Africa? Okay, I think
That's
a
a
very
great,
good question. Yeah, a very great and deep question.
great and deep question. And I worked a little bit on this. I do think within the open source sustainable tech list, there are disaster response, a variety of different programs that are trying to do this. I've seen some very interesting. So when I was at Meta, one of our projects was Safety Check, which is where people mark themselves safe. And so we had a lot of data we were trying to share with um, different NGOs as they did disaster planning. I'd also seen from Google a really interesting case study recently about how they used AI to model flood maps everywhere and to really increase the predictability of flooding events with the hope that they could then get better signals like, oh, hey, UT, like these rains are coming, where your house is like a huge risk of flooding, like you might want to leave, and versus like looking at an old map. Ephraim, one of the key problems that I see again and again, particularly for Africa, is a lack of ground source data that's easily available. This happens in so many fields. I saw it in lack of weather data, and the models are only as good as the data that goes into them. So one problem area that I think might be really interesting is around your point about the gathering accurate and timely data, and what would be an Africa appropriate way to gather accurate and timely data. Are there what kind of sensors exist or low cost sensors could exist? What kind of human ways of gathering data exist? I was spending a lot of time on WhatsApp, as a key place of connection. Is there a way that people could share data there? So yeah, I think that's a very, very open field and a very, very important question. I will just share one other name. I saw a brilliant woman speak just yesterday on a panel about AI and climate. Her name was Kate Kalot, Kallot, and she's based now in Nairobi, and she came out of NVIDIA and running their emerging markets work, and now she's at a company called Amini that's focused on satellite imaging and artificial intelligence for environmental data in Africa. And she was so smart. I just thought she was really good. So she's a human that you should check out. And I saw one last point from Shay about Web3 using a lot of energy. Yeah, I think that's correct. Web3 does use a lot of energy. I'd seen a stat about the US recently, and this is US data, so I don't know off the top of my head global, but in the US that about 5% of energy use is for data centers and internet broadly, and 1% of the 5%, so about 20%, was Web3. So yeah, it does use a lot of data, which is why and even on this, right, the carbon sources of the energy matters. So there's a lot of crypto mining happening in Iceland because Iceland has huge geothermal power because, we've seen volcanoes in Iceland, right? So Iceland has the most geothermal power in the world, and it's free because it's warm underground earth, it's lava. And so there's all these Bitcoin miners in Iceland because of the energy use is free. And that's, as you mine, you make more money if you spend less on energy, but that's also clean energy. Lava doesn't have a carbon footprint. It's not exactly lava, but you get the idea. Whereas sometimes there's examples of old coal plants that could be going offline, and coal's the kind of worst fuel for carbon impacts, staying online because data centers open up on a grid that are focused on blockchain. So, but particularly whether it's renewable or dirty. So yeah, energy efficiency always good. Lower carbon intensity even better. If we use renewable energy, we can have a lot of energy, and frankly, we need more energy. There's particularly in Africa, there's all sorts of communities that may not have access to reliable electricity. Like, we want everyone to have great electricity. We just would like it to be renewable sources because that's what we need to avoid the worst of climate change.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Paul. On behalf of all the hackers and MLH and all in open source, I thank you for your time. And I actually went and found Kate Kalot's Twitter account here. So if anyone wants to reach out, definitely.
I've
But yeah,
seen her speak once and just thought she was so smart, but she was talking about all these topics like so intelligently about data, particularly for Africa. And I knew we were chatting today that I just wanted to bring her up.
perfect. Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you so much for all your insights that you have shared. And again, thanks from MLH. Thanks from all the hackers. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See
Like
you.
hacking. Enjoy the work.
Yes, definitely. Thanks. Thanks all. Bye bye.